Greetings, everyone, and welcome. It is March the 20th, and I'm coming to you today with a facts-only video that's going to be really interesting because I'm here to submit to you that Russia today has told the absolute truth. I know that when we're trying to fight against Russian propaganda, we'll tell you if the Kremlin is talking, if Putin is talking, they are lying. And 99.9% of the time they are. But today, Russia calculated tells the exact truth about the massive Ukrainian strike on the Engels Air Force Base, and there are reasons why they are confirming it and telling the truth, and it's because they want to continue to wage the war against Ukraine and continue to chew up territory to get Ukraine in the least favorable position at all for any type of truce talk, any type of negotiations. So today, Russia taking the strategy to absolutely share the gospel truth of what happened. They confirmed that Ukraine smashed a munitions depot with X-101 missiles in it and other supplies. Not only that, and you can see here on the map, Russia confirming where the arrow's pointing. This is where the Engels Air Force Base is. And over on the left, the non-red portions, that's actually eastern Ukraine there. They confirm it. Not only do they confirm it, they even give the GPS coordinates. So if you are a map nerd, okay, you can see the explosion there. I don't want to play the video. I don't want YouTube to take it down, but it was a massive strike with multiple explosions as the missiles were going off. I even have video of Russians driving around there in Engels around the air base, and there were multiple explosions happening after the initial strikes, which is indicative of these missiles and other munitions igniting and blowing. And even Russians talking about it, they nailed us. They hit the bullseye. They hit the target. And it is the Russians that gave these coordinates. So if you are a map nerd, you want to look them up, you can pause the video here and look them up on Google Earth or Google Maps. The bottom line is it was done. Here is an overview. There's a couple of pictures there for you. You can see in the center of this the Engels Air Force Base, and over to the right of the image, you see the circle where the ammunition depot is. Confirmed by Russia, confirmed by Ukraine, and confirmed by GPS coordinates. Ukraine hit the bullseye, and in this situation and scenario, Russia is actually confirming it. Confirming it. You say, well, why do they want to do this? Because this is the type of information they want to get out, not only to the White House and Trump and Witkoff approaching. Remember, guys, in a few days, they're going to be having further meetings in Saudi Arabia, first with Ukraine, then with Russia, not together. And it's just technical teams talking about the truce, not about peace negotiations. Russia wants to be able to gloat and say, you see, it's Ukraine that's striking our infrastructure. It's Ukraine that's striking at our targets, our energy, our military. It's Ukraine that's fighting the war. It's Ukraine that's pushing across the Belgorod border. It's Ukraine that's continuing to hold in Kursk. The Engels strike, in fact, here are the facts. Their base were 3 Tupolev 95s and 2 Tupolev 160s were at the base. And in the morning after the attack, this is direct facts, guys, another Ilyushin 76 arrived at the base, delivering, most likely from intelligence, a new batch of KH-101 or X-101 missiles for strategic aviation because the supply had been destroyed. After the impact and detonation, debris scattered in a radius of about 5 kilometers, which increases the likelihood, not confirmed, that maybe some of these long-range bombers were actually damaged as well. I have a lot of video from people's homes where they have security cameras, and I mean roofs just blown off from many kilometers away from the epicenter of the detonation there where the drone strike. It was a massive strike. The warehouse detonation is still ongoing. That's what I was explaining to you at the Engels Airfield. The village of Mylinki has been evacuated. Balzalt is being prepared for evacuation. And in that city around that base, they have declared a state of emergency. There is a high probability that the strike destroyed the warehouse that holds the X-101s that always are being prepared for an attack on Ukraine. And typically, Russia is holding between 30 and 70 of these missiles in these stored supplies. So, guys, that is the fact. And Russia responds. They confirm it. And now, putting out in their media, and this is what they are now pushing to the international community. They're going to push it to the White House. They're going to push it into Ukraine. They're going to push it into Europe. They're going to push it everywhere. This is the information directly coming in response from Russia on the attack. Basically, yep, bullseye, Ukraine nailed us. This is what they now write. This is already the second major attack by enemy drones after the conversation between the presidents of Russia and the United States. Earlier, the Ukrainian armed forces attacked oil refining facilities in several regions right after the talks, our energy infrastructure. Now, of course, they don't say anything about those guys. As soon as the conversation was finished, they were attacking Slavyansk. They were attacking Sumy. They were attacking Kyiv. There was a mass attack on Ukrainian infrastructure. We don't mention any of that because, as I shared yesterday, it's very obvious that Witkoff, at the minimum, takes his sources from Russia. Don't take it from me. You can look at the video yesterday. He openly stated he trusts Putin. He trusts his Russian sources. So that's where he, Witkoff, is getting his information from. So this is the information he will continue to receive. It's Ukraine that's striking us. They've already done it twice since Putin and Trump talked. Russia goes on to say, even if the announced ban on strikes against energy infrastructure works, massive strikes will not stop. They will simply be retargeted at other targets. Now the narrative adjusts. We know Ukraine will continue to strike us. It's just the way it will be. In reality, what they're saying is we're going to continue to unleash hell against Ukraine. In turn, the Russian armed forces do not stop working on enemy targets. Last night, in turn, we targeted a massive railway junction in Kirovograd. That's the Russian name for it. In Ukraine, it's called Kropyvnytsky. It's in central Ukraine. Zhenya and I are there all the time. We work out of that place, stay out of that place. From there, we can go to the southern front or to the eastern front. It's hundreds of kilometers from the front line, and it was massive devastation. Russia then saying, so despite all the talks about truces, military actions continue. In fact, here, this is what it looks like in Kropyvnytsky. You can see it. This is Kropyvnytsky burning. This is the massive attack that Ukraine was under last night. And this is what Russia is saying. This is how they're responding to Ukraine's attacks. It's just so interesting, guys. It's so interesting. Ukraine strikes oil refineries, and Ukraine strikes military targets where missiles are stored. Russia strikes what they call the railway junction, but in reality, they devastated residential homes, schools, medical center, adjacent to the railway center, many, many wounded, and somehow by miraculous activity, there were no fatalities, and we're very thankful for that because it was a massive drone strike on Kropyvnytsky, and Ukrainian air defense was overwhelmed. They couldn't stop it, and honestly, Kropyvnytsky was hit very, very, very hard, and it's very unfortunate. But what's so interesting is Russia openly now talking. Guys, they even gave the coordinates for where Ukraine struck because they want to use it to their advantage to further their narrative to the Trump administration and the rest of the world. So, despite all the talk about truces, military actions continue. Now, Zelenskyy, others giving the Kropyvnytsky confirmation. You can see the image there of Kropyvnytsky burning. Just a terrible situation. Professor Gertis and I were talking about it as it was unfolding last night. Zelenskyy, on trip in Finland, and then he was in Norway, made a lot of powerful comments, not only in regard to the strikes against Russia, the strikes that Russia is pushing on Ukraine. The truce talks are just talks. Nothing is happening really. What is going to happen next week in the next conversations that will happen between the Ukrainian delegation and the American delegation in Saudi Arabia and the Russian delegation and the American delegation? We shall wait and see. But Zelenskyy today in Norway making powerful statements regarding Norway, regarding neutrality, regarding Crimea. In fact, big shout out to Norway today, tripling their military support for Ukraine. Kudos to you, Norway, leading by example. Here, take this little piece of Zelenskyy. I've translated it for you, and then I'll give you the bullet points of his statements today.
It's about NATO. And that's what you mean by neutrality, right? Outside NATO, I've always said, sadly, they won't let us in. We really want to join, as we think it'd solve many problems. We spoke with Jonas today, we discussed it. People want to boost our army, air defense and military funding. Where to train, what kind of training and what size force. Who's in the air, who's at sea. Why not just join NATO, make it NATO? It's simpler, less expensive, and so on. But again, it's not up for discussion. The US, NATO's main ally, doesn't support Ukraine joining NATO. That's how it is today. I think we can't just hand this over to the Russians. It's a big gift to remove this topic from negotiations. I simply think it's not right. That's my opinion.
Beautifully stated there by President Vladimir Zelenskyy. So clearly communicated. Number one, it is the United States that is blocking Ukraine from joining NATO. But then he carried the narrative on in a much more powerful way where he says, you know, it's interesting. All these foreign nations, the European nations, our European partners, Great Britain, even the Americans, he's talking about all because Ukrainians have been trained by Americans and Europeans and Poles and French and British, Italian, Spanish, you name it. They have been training and helping, standing with, giving technical advice, strategic information, how to conduct warfare in the sea and in the air and on the ground. And Zelenskyy says, wouldn't it just be easier and less expensive if we join NATO? Because you're giving us the training, you're giving us the support, you're supplying us with weapons, you're supplying us with technology. Russia is already saying that NATO is fighting against us anyway. So wouldn't it just be more logical that we're in NATO? Brilliant point there, as always, President Zelenskyy. Really, the best wartime leader maybe in history. Definitely in the top tier. Winston Churchill and others. Zelenskyy stated, we were ready for the truce. Russia backed up from it in their obvious and other actions. That's referring to the strikes that are nonstop happening against Ukraine. In fact, if I go right now live, this is at 3:19 Eastern, 9:19 Eastern, you can see it is non-stop that is happening. Zelenskyy said, on Monday, our team will meet with the Americans in Saudi Arabia, after which the Americans will hold talks with the Russians, but will not be meeting together. Zelenskyy confirming, we have had no, and he was very bold on this, no conversations regarding Crimea as Russian to end this war. A lot of rumors talking out there, different media sources for 4 or 5 days been talking about Ukraine would be agreed to give up Crimea. Trump's already talking about that. Zelenskyy says, no, we have had zero conversations about Crimea. Additionally, Zelenskyy stating, I have never said that I was ready to discuss Ukraine's neutrality. That is off the table. It is just the Russians who continue to issue the ultimatums and state the necessity for Ukraine to be neutral. It is not us. And additionally, I can tell you on top of this, Yermak coming out today, the advisor to the office of the president, and stating that the Ukrainian red line still stands on the territory. Kudos to you, Yermak, for continuing to stand strong. Zelenskyy says removing Ukraine's accession to NATO from the negotiating agenda is a big gift to Vladimir Putin. You heard him say that directly on the video, and it is 100% true. Putin loving it. And Zelensky's argument, once again, I don't want to reiterate it on a quick facts only video, but you're already doing everything NATO anyway. Why not just put us in? It would be so much smarter. Unfortunately, he said, I must admit that today the main ally in NATO, the United States, does not support Ukraine becoming a member of NATO. Now, the big talk about Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, Donald Trump and others talking about the United States could assume ownership of those and help Ukraine. Listen, Ukraine doesn't need help in managing their nuclear stations. Their technology is great. They are more than capable. What they need is Russia to get off of their land. All nuclear power plants, Zelenskyy stating, are the property of the Ukrainian people. There is no talk of transferring them to another property or nation. Look closely, listen closely. Zelenskyy says, our power plants belong to our people. They do not belong to me. They do not belong to the Rada, to some deputy. They belong to Ukrainians. And no, they're not up for sale. The development of drones, he then goes on to talk about the warfare that the world doesn't understand. And I could show you guys some pictures, and maybe I'll do that in another update. There are so many fiber optic lines laying across the front right now. It looks like an incredible spider web of activity. He says the development of drones is moving beyond the world's current understanding. The things that are happening on the front lines with drone development, Ukraine and Russia, is beginning to move beyond the world's current understanding. He concludes by saying only in a strong position will diplomacy work and a just, reliable end to the war be possible. We want this more than anyone else in the world. It's our nation being destroyed. Sanctions must not be softened. Direct statement to the United States, Treasury Secretary. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. One side, let's strengthen the sanctions. The second side, let's get to a position where we can weaken the sanctions against Russia. Zelenskyy says, no, the sanctions must not be softened, but they must be strengthened. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we're at today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing, liking, commenting. Drop a comment. What do you think about this little narrative here? Russia telling the truth for the first time today. I think it's about the first time that they've told the truth, because on this one and the strike there in Engels, they told the truth. Unfortunately, they're telling the truth for their own gain. You guys be blessed. We'll be back at you later. Make sure you have the like button and the notification bell on and all those other things. Big thank you to our team, our moderators. Be blessed, and we'll be back.